welcome to the first devlog for my game Liyf. The first couple of episodes are going to be more of an overlook on what I've done so far from the beginning, and I plan for future videos to be an overview of the progress from the last video. So let's start. I had the idea for this game for some time in my head, and I drew a concept of the first level on paper, so I could later translate to a real game. And I first tried to make it in the default engine, but it didn't quite fit me, so I transferred to Godot. First I added a basic character which can run around and jump up onto things. I tweaked the values until I was happy with how the movement felt. I made it so when the character's motion is going up, he's playing the jump animation, and when falling down, the falling animation. Most of the assets I used were free assets I found around the internet and modified them to fit the game aesthetics. I'll include the link which I took my character sprites from down in the description. After that, I added attacking and crouching by having an area 2D node attached to my sprite with a disabled collision shape in front of it, which would be activated when the player attacks. I also added an attack animation that would play when the player would attack. The crouching was as simple as saving the character's height in the beginning and lowering it while the crouch button is pressed. I also had to put the sprite a little bit up so it wouldn't clip through the ground. Then I started working on the level a little bit. I made the statue and the two buttons and coded it so when the statue would move up and down depending if we were on the buttons. They have a small area on top of them, which when there are more bodies overlapping than in the beginning, meaning something entered the area, the pressed button animation is played and a signal is emitted to the statue to move down until it goes down enough, or a signal is sent saying the button is not pressed anymore. I also worked a little bit on the house graphics, combining some pictures and assets I found. This looked less than stellar, but did the job for now. I then made another button which would open the chimney on the top of the house when pressed. It functioned the same way as the other two buttons did. I made a simple health system for my character and a UI element to display the current health the character has. For this I followed the Game Endeavor's tutorial on health and damage. I'll leave a link to it in the description. It's an amazing tutorial and you should definitely check out his channel. After that I worked on probably one of the most important parts of this game, the shadow, at least a prototype of it. I basically duplicated the player scene and changed up some pieces of code and the scene to make the shadow scene. For example, I put all of the collision on the shadow into another layer so it can later pass through transparent surfaces like I imagined. I removed the health system from the shadow and made it so when it takes any damage it dies, and sends a signal to the character that it died, making him possible to release another shadow. Then I made the release possible by having a new keybind, which when pressed the shadow would become activated and visible and teleported to the player's position. Of course, I made sure that it's not possible to create multiple shadows by spamming the release key. The whole shadow release will tie nicely when I have the lighting system, making it possible to only release the shadow when getting hit by light, which is going to be a core mechanic of the game. And finally, for this episode, I made the sprites for the shadow by copying the character sprites, opening them up in GIMP, or you can do in Photoshop or Krita, selecting the transparent part, inverting the selection, filling it with black, and turning down the opacity of the layer so the shadow will be transparent to about 65%. That will be it for this episode. Tune in to the next one where I will add some enemies so we can start fighting. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe and consider supporting me on Patreon. You can also follow me on Twitter for more frequent updates on what I'm working on at the moment. Thanks, bye.